Good evening, everyone. From New York, I'm Ayman Mohyeddin in for Chris Hayes this evening. It has been nearly 2 months since Russia launched its unprovoked war on Ukraine. Russian troops are now bearing down on the eastern part of the country, an area that is known as the Donbass, and it's fueling their new assault with artillery and missile strikes all along the 300-mile eastern front. Now, in the utterly devastated city of Mariupol, the Ukrainian government estimates the death toll now stands at more than 20,000. Let that sink in for a moment. The commander of the last remaining Ukrainian troops in that city, holed up in a steel plant with hundreds of wounded troops and civilians, is literally begging the world for help.
Це наше звернення до світу. Це може бути нашим останнім зверненням. В нас, можливо, залишились лічні дні або години. Угрупування противника в десятки разів перебільшує нас. Ми звертаємось до світових лідерів допомогти нам. Ми звертаємось з проханням застосувати в нас процедуру екстракшн та вивести нас на територію третьої держави.
Today, Ukraine's deputy prime minister said that a planned humanitarian corridor to evacuate civilians out of Mariupol did not work as planned, blaming the Russian government for its disorganization and negligence. And according to the United Nations, more than 5 million refugees have now fled the violence in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is asking the United States to do more to punish Russia. And during a recent phone call with President Joe Biden, Zelensky at one point reportedly requested that the United States designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. And that's a classification that is currently reserved for just 4 countries: North Korea, Cuba, Iran, and Syria. Now, the Washington Post is reporting that Biden did not commit to any specific actions on that call, but he did tell Zelensky he is willing to explore a range of proposals to exert greater pressure on Moscow. And today, Russian President Vladimir Putin ratcheted up tensions even further with a nuclear-capable missile test, saying that the new weapon, quote, will force all who are trying to threaten our country in the heat of a frenzied, aggressive rhetoric to think twice. Now, amidst all of the threats and the devastation on the ground that is taking place in Ukraine, and Ukrainians and Russians losing their lives, there is a real fundamental question here that I think is actually not being discussed enough about how we should be responding to all of this and whether our involvement, the United States' involvement and the West, is actually helping the Ukrainians or not. Now, military aid continues to pour into Ukraine from all over the world, although it has sparked fierce debate in some countries. Take, for example, Germany. Germany has pledged more than $1 billion in military aid to Ukraine, but its government is divided over whether to send heavy weapons, including artillery and tanks. Here in the U.S., the Biden administration is actually planning to send another $800 million in military aid to Ukraine. That, to be clear, is in addition to the $800 million package that was announced just last week. And that would bring the total amount of U.S. military aid to Ukraine since the start of the war well above $3 billion. In just 2 months, we have pledged about the same amount of military aid to Ukraine as we did to Israel. Of course, Israel is the largest recipient of U.S. military aid, and that would be in the entire year of 2020. And there has been practically no debate over sending it in Congress. Now, of course, the Ukrainian people are being terrorized, and of course they need help, and they have every right to defend themselves by any means necessary. But as the dead continue to pile up in Ukraine, are we just beating the drums of war instead of trying to make this awful conflict end? Now, should we be doing more to try to bring about a peaceful resolution? President Zelensky has indicated multiple times that he's willing to come to the negotiating table. Over the weekend, he talked about the balance between continuing to fight and protecting his people's lives. And he said that Ukraine and Russia have to talk.
They can send millions, but we could still lose our state.
Ти повинен обрати баланс.
That's why one has to strike a balance. Whether you want to or not, you are not the only hero. The people are the heroes. And we must protect their lives, maximally. We cannot give up our territory. But we must find at least some dialogue with Russia, if they are capable, and if we are still ready.
At the end of last month, There was optimism when Ukrainian and Russian negotiations actually met in Istanbul. Ukraine offered a detailed peace proposal, and Russia said that it would drastically reduce military activity in the capital region. Unfortunately, there has not been any real progress since then. But here's the thing. We continue to send more and more weapons, and our own national security apparatus is regularly speaking out in a way that pretty much sounds like it is encouraging war. Just listen to what former Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta told my colleague Andrea Mitchell earlier today.
I think the most important mission right now is to do whatever is necessary to provide the weapons to the Ukrainians so that they can stop the Russian advance in Donbass. If they can successfully stop that advance, that will be another defeat for the Russians and a real signal to Putin that it's time to leave. I think that's the primary mission right now.
Now, the primary mission for the United States should be doing what is best for the Ukrainian people, not running some sort of proxy war against Vladimir Putin. And the best thing for the Ukrainian people, who are being slaughtered and terrorized and forced to flee their homeland, is to bring this war to an end.